Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into a statement of faith that's been echoing through churches for well over 1,000 years, the Apostles' Creed. We're going to unpack the history, the power, and the really profound meaning that's packed into just its opening lines.
So let's just dive right in. You might be looking at this and thinking, an ancient text? Really? What does that have to do with my life today? Well, it turns out it was designed to answer some of the biggest questions we still have about faith, community, and our place in the world. Let's find out what makes it so timeless.
Okay, so first things first. To really get the creed, you have to understand that it wasn't written for, private, quiet reflection. Nope. It was born out of a real need for a public, group declaration of faith.
Now there's a cool legend that says each of the 12 apostles wrote one line of the creed. But the real story is a little different. It actually grew out of an even earlier, shorter text called the Old Roman Creed, which was used for these big group confessions during baptism ceremonies way back in the 2nd century.
And this evolution, well, it didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process. Over several hundred years, different phrases were added and tweaked until the text finally settled into the form we know today, right around the 7th century. Just think about that. That makes this statement of faith at least 1,300 years old.
So why do people still say it? Well, the sources point to 4 really key reasons. For one, it's a fantastic summary of core Christian teaching. Second, it acts as a kind of guardrail, alerting us to incomplete or unbalanced versions of the faith. It also reminds us that, hey, we are not alone in this journey. It connects us to this huge, global family that stretches across the entire planet and all through time. Ultimately, it tells us that to believe is to belong.
And I love this image. It just perfectly captures that feeling of connection. When someone recites the creed, they aren't just speaking for themselves. They're adding their voice to this massive choir that stretches across every geographical border and all the way back through history, all of them affirming the same core truths together.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that very first phrase, I believe. Sounds so simple, right? But believe me, there is a lot packed into those 2 little words.
So get this. The word creed itself actually comes from the very first word of the Latin version, credo. But what it means here goes so much deeper than just, agreeing with an idea.
And this right here is a really key distinction. Saying I believe isn't just intellectual assent. It's not just saying, yep, I think that statement is factually correct. It's about placing your trust in God, a full-on commitment of your whole person, a response with your entire being.
Theologian Karl Barth had a great way of breaking this down. He saw it as a 3-part journey. It all starts with trust, a choice that we are totally free to make. That trust then leads to knowledge. And we're not talking about academic facts here, but real, practical wisdom for living your life. And finally, that knowledge gets expressed through confession, which means living it out in your actions day by day.
And this is the heart of Barth's idea. Faith isn't a restriction or a burden, it's a freedom. The freedom to respond to God, the freedom to choose to trust even when life is hard or when people don't get it. It's a freedom that you can't buy or earn. It can only be given.
So if faith is this act of free trust, then who exactly is the object of that trust? Well, the Creed is super specific about how it introduces God, and the order of the words is completely intentional.
Notice it says Father before it says Creator. And according to the sources, that is no accident. It establishes that God's primary nature is relational. He was Father before he even created anything, and his work as Creator just flows right out of who he is as Father.
Karl Barth also has this term for God. He calls him fundamentally other. Now, what does that mean? It means that while God is the source of everything, nothing in the created world, nothing we can see or touch or measure, is God.
So that raises a big question, right? If God is so completely different from everything we know, how can we possibly know him? I mean, we can use analogies. We could say the sun is like God in its power, but we can never say the sun is God. The Creed's answer is that we can't just discover God through science or logic. We know God because he chose to reveal himself to us as a Father through Jesus.
So, right after Father, the Creed adds just one single adjective to describe him, Almighty. But the meaning here might be a little different from what you expect.
This isn't about some random, unpredictable lightning bolt kind of force. The sources describe God's power as the power of law. And this is so key. It's not a power that restricts freedom. It's the power that actually creates the conditions for life and freedom to exist in the first place.
So what does this power of law look like?
Well, it's the force that establishes a reliable order, which makes real freedom possible, instead of just chaos. It's a power that demands kindness and justice, guiding our relationships so that our communities can actually thrive. It's the framework that makes life not just possible, but meaningful.
Okay, so let's put this together. If we live in a world created by a loving, almighty Father who establishes order so that freedom can flourish, how are we supposed to live in it? Well, the Creed immediately points us to the answer.
The sources explain that God gave a very specific mission to Israel, to be his righteous servants, his representatives here on earth. And after a long, complicated history, that mission was finally and perfectly fulfilled by one person, Jesus.
And this is where it all leads. Jesus, who the Creed calls Lord, showed everyone what his lordship actually looked like in the most shocking way possible. By giving himself up on the cross, he took on the ultimate role of the servant of all.
It all keeps coming back to this powerful idea of one. There is one God, the Father, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, who calls his followers into one unified purpose.
And this brings us to an absolutely crucial point. If Jesus is Lord, then his followers are his servants. And what does a good servant do? They follow their master's example. And since the master humbled himself and became the servant of all, well, the defining calling for his followers is to take on that exact same identity.
And that leaves us with this final, lingering question. We've gone from a statement that builds community to a profound declaration of trust, and now we see that the Creed's opening lines end with a life-altering calling, to be like the one who is both Lord and servant. So what does being a servant of all even look like today? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.